Hi, I'm Parmi Olsen in London with the Forbes.com video network. Today we're delighted to have Debbie Purdy and John Wiles to discuss the controversial issue of prolonging life and assisted suicide. Debbie Purdy, who has multiple sclerosis, last month won a landmark court case to have the law on assisted suicide clarified in Britain, paving the way for her husband to help her commit suicide overseas with less fear of prosecution. John Wiles is a former consultant in palliative care and a trustee for Care Not Killing. It's an organization which rejects assisted suicide and any changes to the law that make it more readily available. So how should the law be clarified, and should the law be changed?
It seems so inappropriate to have a law that was passed in 1961 that was undoubtedly a very progressive law then. But when we have a different society, we've landed on the moon, we've had a heart transplant operation, we've had the Vietnam War, things are just different than they were, and I think we need to revisit again what's appropriate, because the ability to keep somebody alive has progressed extremely far, but the ability to extend their quality of life hasn't necessarily, and I don't want to be able to live far longer than I would have been able to 40 years ago because of medical science, but without a quality of life that I find acceptable.
So how exactly do you think the law needs to be changed? What new law do you think should come into force?
I think we need to consider a law that would allow people who are chronically ill and incurable to be able to have an assisted death. There are other campaigners in this country, like Dignity in Dying, who believe it should only be the terminally ill who are able to ask for assistance.
Making it available as a choice, John, don't you think that's a reasonable thing to be asking?
I don't. I would worry about it, because I think once we as a society accept in principle the willingness to kill a patient to resolve the problem, whether it's with their consent or not, then I think we fundamentally change how we care for people. And I would worry that it's not possible then to control the groups of people. Debbie is very clear about how she would like limits and clarity, but that's much more difficult to impose once a law is passed to allow it. People who we, and probably Debbie, wouldn't consider to be terminally ill have ended their lives in Switzerland. So once you pass a law that allows it, it's very difficult to gain control.
There is an aging population. More people are getting older and dying at an older age. Doesn't that suggest that in places where assisted suicide is legal, more people will feel pressure to commit suicide so as not to be a burden?
I think that if you look, for instance, at Oregon, the examples of Oregon, there isn't a mad rush to end your life early. I think it's a very low opinion of the human race if you believe that people will put pressure on loved ones to end their lives early because they want to inherit their house. I think that the population in general of this world loves its relatives and family members and so on, and would encourage them to live as long as they can, but they don't want to see them in excruciating pain that cannot be managed, however good palliative care is.
I do worry in a society that changes the law, accepts that the solution for patients' problems, however you define them, is to kill the patient, then I worry about we will not resource palliative care, we will not need to resource good care for people at the end of life because we've got a £7 option of killing them.
What do you make of the difference between public and private health care? Do you think that with the profit motive in private health care, that can lead to not as good care as you would get under a state-run healthcare system?
The private sector tends to cherry-pick the things that are easy to do, cost-effective, and make a profit, and leaves the expensive, less fashionable and difficult things to do to the state sector. I think it's unacceptable. I think the private sector should do it all and do it well, or we should resource the public sector to do it all and do it as well as the resourced private sector.
But in this case, you're talking about the United States or in the
both.
public
Both. I think if you can eliminate 50 million socially deprived Americans from the care system, it probably is easier to run a profit-orientated medical care system. But if you had to provide that to everybody in America and all children, and get your infant mortality in all parts of America to that of a civilized society, that would be a real challenge.
What do you say to people who would say that the state-run healthcare system, say of the United Kingdom, is badly run and inefficient?
Any system can be inefficient, okay? The waiting lists in this country have been an issue, but over the last 5 years and 10 years, particularly in relation to cancer care, which is where a lot of my patients come from, has improved enormously. So I agree that there have been problems, but they're not fixable because it's a government-run health service. You know, they are fixable problems, and they are no more difficult to fix in the health service with the right attitudes and the right drive and vision as they are in the private sector.
I trust my GP, my general practitioner, because their motive is not how do I make most profit, am I beholden to a particular drug company. Their profit is that the medical wellness of their patients is a priority, and that's all it is. And I think that's why people want physicians involved in an assisted death, for instance, because we trust our doctors.